everybody, it's Christina of CraftyPaws. I'm here to share with you guys a process video of a card that I designed for essential workers. During this COVID-19 pandemic, I've kind of lost my mojo, and this card design that I came up with really inspired me to get back into my craft room, and I'm really excited to share the process with you. There's a little bit of masking, some doodling, and well, you'll see. Let's get started. This cute little girl from the Mama Elephant in My Heart stamp set from about 6 years ago was what inspired me. Her outstretched arms reminded me that if I could line up three little kiddos that I masked off and doodled on so that they all looked a little bit different would be a perfect representation of people staying 6 feet apart, social distancing. So I masked off, as you could see, the little ponytails and the bottom of her dress so that I could doodle in with a Copic multiliner pen a little pair of pants, a little belt, and I just made this into a little boy. I'm going to do this again and use the same stamp. I'm positioning it into place into my Misty stamp tool, and I'm going to use little bits of washi tape again to mask off the ponytails and also kind of the front of her bangs so that I could have a slightly different hairstyle again for this little kiddo. I, of course, didn't want three kids that looked exactly the same and just color them up differently. I wanted them to be individuals. So for me, this little masking and stamping trick I thought was perfect for this. This time I gave the little kid a side part and then gave her longer ponytails on each side, kind of like the kind that I had when I was a kid. And I made the dress into a skirt. Now I'm doodling on masks onto all of the kids. I'm just taking the top of the little line that's supposed to signify the nose, and I'm adding little lines on the sides to doodle on those little masks. Now, I thought that this sentiment was perfect, and it comes right from the stamp set. It says, "May you be protected in all that you do, and know that our thoughts are always with you." Isn't that perfect? I just love this stamp set even more now than when I first got it. Now, for this first little girl, I decided to give her a darker skin tone. I also kind of wanted to make sure I represented all different skin tones here, so it's kind of like my version of a mini human rainbow. So I'm using the colors that you see on the left there for a kind of African American skin tone. Now for the little boy on the right, I decided to give him kind of a Mediterranean skin tone, a little bit more red or dark, not super pale. This is more of kind of my husband's skin tone when he has a good tan in the summer. The areas are so small, but if you add a little bit of blending like I'm doing here, you really get a better sense of dimension. Just under the hair, kind of bangs on the sides of the face, little bit of blush makes a world of difference, even in these tiny little faces. For this girl in the middle, I'm going to give her a Caucasian skin tone, so I'm using some lighter earthy colors, E00 and E01, and a little bit of R20 for blush. This is, again, really simplified. The spaces are so small that I'm not even using 3 marker colors for this skin tone, and then adding the blush. Now for the masks, I initially decided I was going to use a pale neutral gray as well as for the gloves. But then you'll see I changed my mind. I thought that having that gray would not be as cheerful as I wanted the card to be, so I'm making the gloves and masks blue. And this, I think, really brightens up the feeling of the card. I wanted to make a sincere appreciation card, but I also wanted it to be more happy and cheerful, kind of more, reflecting springtime here in the US. So I'm using the same blues. In addition, I'm adding B45 for the little boy's pants or shorts. I don't know. They're so little. And then for his top, I decided to go with a bright kind of springy green color. I thought that, again, would be a cheerful color of new life. So I'm using some YG colors to color up his top. And I think that really brightens up that little boy. It probably still looks weird to you guys because their hair is not colored yet, but you'll see this all evens out as I keep going. For the little girl, I use some of the same green colors for the skirt and some yellow colors for the top. And I think I just wanted to kind of add another bright color, but still keep a continuity in the colors that I'm using. That's why I repeated her skirt being the same colors as the little boy's shirt. For the girl in the middle, I decided her dress could be a pretty purple color. I'm adding some shading onto the sides, adding some, hopefully what ends up looking like some, not pleats per se, but, you know, a reflection of the fabric in her dress. And I'm giving her yellow collars and yellow trim at the bottom of her dress. I also decided that for her hair, I could use the same or similar yellow colors. So I'm using the base Y11 and then adding some hair texture with the Y15 and YR24 to give it a little more of a realistic, not like school bus yellow, but a little bit more of a realistic blonde color. So I'm just trying to do a little bit of flicking to indicate the texture of her hair. But again, these areas are so tiny. There's not a bunch of blending that you can do in that tiny space. For her buttons and her shoes, I decided to use an N6 and an N9. And I decided just to not introduce too many additional colors. I'm going to use the same N6 and N9 for the little boy's belt and his shoes as well. I use that YR, that orange, just for his belt buckle to indicate like a bright gold brassy belt buckle. And I decided to add a little bit more shading to the gray areas of the sides of the masks there for a brief second. And then for the girl on the left, I decided to give her black hair. I used a pale blue undertone for the highlights, and I'm using an N6 and an N9, again, the same colors that I used for the shoes, for her hair to give her a realistic black hair color, but still have highlights with that blue, where the highlights in her hair would be visible where the rounded part of her head is, and on the tops and outside edges of the little ponytails. And then for the little boy, I decided to give him brown hair. So this is a pretty standard brown combination for hair, E55, 57, and 59. And I just gave him a base of the E55. I'm adding some hair texture with the E57 and 59, especially at where the part is and on the sides of his head, at the base of his bangs. And that pretty much finishes off all these three little kiddos. I think they came out really cute, and I'm now deciding what to do with the background. I didn't want to add too much, but I didn't want to leave it as stark as it was. So I'm using an MFT cloud stencil die, or I'm sorry, a cloud stencil, and I'm using some tumbled glass Tim Holtz Distress ink with a blender tool. And I'm not even masking off the area with a sentiment. I'm just kind of using the stencil and lightening up the blending where I think I would come into contact with the kids or with the sentiments. It's really not that difficult. I want to make sure that I don't blend onto the lighter areas like the center girl's hair. And I think that came out pretty well. I hand cut out another stencil, just a little swoop for the bottom to indicate the grass. And I'm blending off some twisted citron and mowed lawn. And I'm just lightening up the blending where the kids' feet and little skin tone is, where their ankles are. And I'm not too worried about it blending super smoothly because I know I'm going to be using a die to cut around some of this. But I think that kind of concludes the card front preparation. I'm using a Pretty Pink Posh die. It's a scallop frame. And you can see that it cut out the image perfectly. And now I decided just to add a little bit of dimension, I die cut the frame portion a few extra times, actually 4 times in total. And then I'm going to put the card front frame on top of the stacked 4. And I think that'll add a lot of dimension. I've glued that onto the card base and insetting that image in the middle. And now I'm going to briefly show you how I prepared the inside liner. And off camera, I colored up this extra little girl, also from the same stamp set, doodling on a little mask onto her. I fussy cut her out, and I'm just going to put her on the inside with the extra sentiment, "You are my hero," which is also from the stamp set. And that's the completed card. I had so much fun designing this. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you still are interested in this Mama Elephant stamp set, it is still available, and I'll link to it in the description box below. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you guys are having a wonderful, safe, crafty day. I love you guys. Thanks for watching.